to draw circles. And all things that are circular are capable of movement. It represents the spiritual side of life. All things that are circular, correct? We use a compass to draw circles. And all things that are circular are capable of movement. It represents the spiritual side of life. All things that are circular are capable of movement. A wheel is circular, it rolls. A ball is circular, it rolls. Our heads are circular, and there should be some activity in our heads. There should be some movement in our heads. And when you look to the sky, most of the heavenly objects are circular. They are capable of movement. And they say at Jesus' grave, there was a round stone placed in front of the grave. But it was able to be moved because it was round. Not that Islam teaches that, but that's what Christianity teaches. So it was able to be rolled away. So the compass really is a symbol, an instrument symbolizing the circle, or the spiritual life, and the square. You have what is called the simple square and the perfect square. Now, the simple square is like this. Looks like an L. This is a simple square in 90 degrees in here. They meet at 90 degrees. Now, the simple square, again, helps us to make what is called the perfect square. You see, a square is four. Square here, square there, square there, square there. So four of those bring us to 360 degrees, 90 degrees each. But anyway, when you see the Masonic symbol, you see the compass and the square. But you see the simple square, which really alludes to the perfect square. Because you need it for the perfect square. Now, what is a square? How do we prove that the square represents material life? That's what we're just talking about balance. How do we prove that? All things, or many things that are bound to the earth are square. The animals that don't fly but walk on the earth walk on fours. That's a square. 1, 2, 3, 4. The chairs that we sit in are four. The foundations of the abilities are four. When we start out as youngsters, we fall on four. So the square represents the material world, or the material life. And as human beings, we all know that we need to advance materially, right? We need to achieve things materially. But we should also have a spiritual conscience. In fact, during our suffering and slavery, it was our spiritual discipline that pulled us through, brothers and sisters. It was our belief in the God, the unseen power that pulled us through. So we need that balance. So the compass and the square represents a union of the material and the spiritual. As further evidence that this is material, that the four is on the earth, is that in our holy book it says that God made man, made Adam, and then he told him to get out of heaven into the earth. He cast him out and he cast Satan out. And when he cast him out, Satan told God, to make it quick, that he was going to come before the man from before him, in front of him, from behind him, from his left, from his right. Not upstairs, but on the earth when he was cast out. And in the Bible, in the book of Job, we know that Satan was walking on earth, up and down, to and fro. So the square, again, to emphasize the point, the compass and the square represent the material and the spiritual. So when you see that symbol, you have some idea of what that's about. Masonry attempts to bring its members into the light, stage by stage, step by step, through 33 degrees, to help them to grow. This is what it teaches. Now, how does one become a Mason? And I'm covering Masonry first because that's the topic. Freemasonry, ancient Egypt, and the Islamic desert. I'd much rather talk about Islam first. But we want to go by the topic. How does one become a Mason? Basically, through recommendation. You have to be vouched for. Recommendation and initiation. Once a person is recommended and if they are accepted based on that recommendation, then they come into the lodge and they go through a series of initiation. So through the use of initiation, symbols, and explanation, they are brought into the Masonic lodge. And it has 33 degrees, but the most important degree, the early degree, the foundation, is 3. It's called Inter-Apprentice, Fellow Craft, and Master Mason. Physical, mental, and spiritual. And you know they say that Jesus rose on the 3rd day. So it really represents that development from physical, mental, and spiritual. And some of the names that they are known by is sons of light, travelers, and we can relate to that as travelers. They are told to travel from west to east in search of light. They believe that man should travel from west to east in search of light, knowledge. And in the Islamic religion, we are told to travel as far as China in search of knowledge, to seek wisdom from cradle to grave, to travel and see what was the fate of those who came before. To move about, because traveling expands your mind. They are called builders, as we mentioned earlier, to build, to construct your life. And in the high degrees or the shrine degree, they are called nobles of the mystic shrine. Now, we can just take a minute and reflect on this statement that is often said by Masons. The question is generally asked, which way are you traveling? And the answer is generally from west to east in search of life. And sometimes it is added and in search of that which is lost. Now we are in the Western Hemisphere. We as a people were taken from the east. Africa is east of North America. We were taken from Africa, the African continent, and made slaves in the West. There's a story in Masonry about a master builder who was also taken to the West. But why do they say they travel from west to east in search of light? What's in the east? If the people of Africa and of the east, the Near East, were savages, now mind you, a great percentage of our presidents, congressmen, founding fathers were Masons. Those who established this land, many of them were Masons. Many slave owners were Masons. Many who advanced the philosophy and the ideal that Africa was a land of savages, and that the people of Africa were created by God to forever be hewers of wood and toters of water for Europeans. Many of them were Masons. Those who said that we were cursed by God, black, and that we offered nothing to the civilization of man in the world, and that we were in fact a burden on the world. Many of them say that they traveled from west to east in search of light. Now what do you find there in the east? What do you find in Africa? What do you find in Asia, the Far East? Well, let's look for a minute and see. You know, the sun rises in the east, and sets in the west. In ancient times, those who worship the sun, they look daily for the rising of the sun to bring them the light and the warmth. So they look there for the rising of the sun in hopes of a brighter day. So that's on a physical level, looking east. But what does it mean spiritually? If you happen to have a dollar bill on you, you take it out. It's not from no collection for me. But if you have a dollar bill, maybe we can kind of reinforce our point. If you happen to share something of interest with okay. Not a $5 bill, not a $10 bill. You're gonna pull out that $100 bill, another $1,000 bill. Only a $1 bill. Now, brothers and sisters, this is important. This is important information. You see the shape of this dollar bill? This is what we know as rectangle or something called oblong. All margins are set up like this, oblong, rectangle. And they have two circles, very important circles, two columns. But the Islamic prayer book, the prayer book of Muslim Jews, I haven't seen a perfectly square. They're rectangular. Okay? On the back, now mind you, let's keep in mind, traveling from west to east in search of light. Now on the back, you see a pyramid, right? The pyramid is from Africa, northeast Africa, Egypt, okay? Now, no African Americans put this dollar bill together. No black people, African Americans, put this pyramid on it, the symbol from Africa on it. Okay? We had nothing to do with that. Before I go into some details, just notice that there's a bird, an eagle there, and there's a pyramid there, right? That the bird is an eagle, some say. And I happen to believe that's what it is. And a bird is not grounded on the earth, is it? A bird flies in the sky, particularly an eagle. He flies with great force and speed, and he has great vision. Some say he can look at the sun. But this eagle, this bird, represents the spiritual development again. Because he's not bound to the earth. He can fly in the sky. He has wings. But then on the other side, you see a physical structure. A stone, heavyweight stone. The pyramids, big, huge stones. When I went to Egypt a couple of years ago, I didn't realize how big these stones were. They're like this big. I said, wow, move these heavy things. So on one side, we see not rocks, but heavy stone structure, which is solid on the earth, that's been there for thousands of years. So that represents materialism, right? Material structure, the earth. So on one side is spiritual vision in the eagle, right? And the pyramid has an eye over it, correct? So that tells us material vision. So here the dollar is showing us material and spiritual vision. And in the Muslim prayer, on our prayer book, some of you have seen the movies and they talk about the flying carpet. What is that? Say that with there's a flying carpet. It's called a flying carpet because the prayer is spiritual, right? We spiritually ascend in the prayer. But it's a physical thing that we go through. We go through physical positions. But its focus is spiritual. Although there are physical It was some advice given to a wealthy man. And the advice was, seek with everything that God has given you. The afterlife, the spiritual. But don't forget your share in this material life. So once again, this dollar is your material and spiritual balance. Now let's see if we can get a little more specific here. Let us look at this eagle over here, okay? Now, the Masons say they travel from west to east in search of light. Which way is that eagle looking on me? He's looking towards the pyramid, not away from the pyramid. He's looking towards the pyramid, which we have established and we know is in the east. It's in Africa. So it's looking in that direction, toward the east. Over the eagle's head, we see 13 stars, right? If you count. There's 13 stars. The words that's in his mouth, in pluribus unum, many from one, or many of one, has 13 letters. The shield consists of 13 stripes. The arrow in his claws are 13. And the leaf or berries are 13. And the feathers are 9. So this eagle represents America. The symbol of America is the bald eagle, correct? And the 13 represents the original 13 colonies. So this eagle on this American dollar bill speaks to the history and the structure of America. Why do you say the structure? The system of America. Because the upper part, the head, if you look at it, that represents the office of the president, the executive branch. Well, how do you say that? Because the words are coming out of the mouth, and the president speaks for the country. Then when you come down to the shield, you see the 2 wings, correct? That represents the legislative branch. The president is the executive branch, the legislative branch, or the Congress. The legislative branch is the Congress. And what do we have? 2 houses, right? 2 wings, 2 houses. The House of Representatives and the Senate. Then when you come on down to the feathers, there's 9 feathers. And that represents the judicial branch with the 9 judges on the Supreme Court. So it speaks to the structure of the system. But they do need to make a modification. And if you have a black pencil or marker, you can color one of the feathers a little dark like black. Because we have Brother Clarence Thomas there, and he's a dark black man. So they go back to print. That's what I'm going to tell them to make one of them go dark. So, if you can agree with me that this represents America. The eagle is the symbol of America. We have the system. We have the history. Now, that means this America, this history, the system is look east, historic, to set up America. Now, when we look over at the pyramid, what do we see? Under the pyramid, you see Nalos or sacrum under the base of it. Nalos is new, order is order, sacrum, right? New order society, new world order. When the Europeans came to America, they saw this as the new world. That's what they call it, right? The new destiny, the new Jerusalem, the new world, America. And when you look at the pyramid really has a base of 4. It has 4 right angles, 4 triangle, right angle, 90-degree angle, the foundation. It's 4. And in ancient Egypt, the wise of ancient Egypt, they identified these 4 as the 4 basic elements of the universe. Fire, water, air, and earth. And that's what they identified the 4 as. And the 4 directions. But if you look at it, it forms a triangle. That's what they're marveled at about the pyramid. How are they able to lay a foundation of 360 degrees, perfect right angles at the base, but then bring it up to a triangle? How do you have a square and a triangle? That's what they've been marveled about and wondering about, in addition to how they were physically do this. So when you see the 3, you see the 4, then you see it comes up on 3. The 3 alludes again to the physical, mental, and spiritual. The growth of man. Now, what is the eye? We see an eye up there. Some have said that this is the all-seeing eye of God. But if you notice, that eye is in a capstone. It's in a triangle itself. Right? It's inside of a capstone, correct? Everyone sees that. See it, right? So that can't be the all-seeing eye of God, because God is infinite. The infinite and the absolute cannot be contained in the finite. God's vision cannot be put in anything. No capstone or nothing. So it's not the eye of God. It means it represents man's growth towards vision. That we move from forward, and we stand up, and we move up. And if you notice, the eye is lit. It has light around on this pyramid. It has rays coming out. That man grows and reaches for knowledge, for wisdom. That his eye, his third eye, should be lit with knowledge and wisdom. So this represents the growth and the movement and the development of man. How we should grow and develop. What we should teach our children these things. So we want them to grow up and have knowledge and wisdom, so their minds will be lit with knowledge and wisdom. So that's what that is. It comes from the base and it comes on up, and the 3 is physical, mental, and spiritual. But let's go a little more to this. Now we say that this eye here represents vision, man's growth towards vision. Why is it at the top? Not at the side, not at the bottom. Because the higher up you go on a building. In ancient Egypt, they had a belief in a god called Isis. They say that Isis was represented, symbolized by the sun and by an eye. That he was symbolized by the sun and by an eye. And his sister wife Isis was symbolized by the moon. Okay? And they say Isis wore 7 veils. Because the moon waxes and wanes through 7 stages that we can see. It's 8, but the new moon we can't see with our eyes. But it waxes and wanes from a half moon, a full moon, a half moon, a crescent. Then it reverses to the half moon, the crescent, full moon, etc. But it goes through 7 stages. And that's why in the mythology it says Isis wore 7 veils. But Egypt, the thing about Egypt, according to certain riddles of Egypt, because we were trying to show the point with America and Egypt, okay? Egypt, there was a mythology that you couldn't enter Egypt unless you broke a riddle. Unless you broke a particular riddle. And one of the riddles was called the riddle of the Sphinx. Okay? The Sphinx, which was the head of a man and the body of a lion, or some type of animal. And the riddle was something like this. What creature walks on 4, then on 2, and then on 3? And if you could answer it, you was consumed by the Sphinx. But the answer to the riddle was man. Man, know yourself, man. How was it man? Because when we start out as a child, we crawl on 4, correct? And then when we get strong, young man, strong back, etc., homo erectus. We walk on two. And when we get in old age, our back is a little weak, and we walk with a staff for a while as the third leg support. So the answer to the riddle is man. But it spoke to man's development, his growth and his development. See, in ancient Egypt, that was a great science, the science of psychology, the science of the development of man. So if you broke the riddle of the Sphinx, then you could enter Egypt. And that four, as we said, represented the four elements of the universe. The two represented the material and the spiritual. And the three meant that you had evolved to your third level, physical, mental, and spiritual. And that staff represents your staff of knowledge, the experience. See, a younger person may be moving on too, but an older person say, well, listen, I'm telling you from my experience, you shouldn't go that way. We see fighters in the ring. They win certain fights because of their ring experience. Now, they might lose because they don't have the endurance and the stamina of the young person. But they know how to use the ring from their ring experience. So that third leg, that cane, that staff, represents that knowledge, that experience. Now, we got the four. What creature walks on 4, 2, and 3. Now, let's see America. Now, again, we want to tie this hand to as many things as we can. You know, in Masonry, they have what is called the 4 points of entrance, which really, there are several things that go with it, but what comes to my mind is what is called temperance. Temperance, control, temperance. Fortitude, which is courage and strength. Prudence, which is the ability to govern, rule, control oneself by the use of reason. And justice, fair dealing one with another. They also have several things, but two things that come to mind is 2 columns that they say was at the portrait of Solomon's temple, called Boaz and Yakin. And they say he had to enter through these columns to go into the temple. And one was on the right and one was on the left. And on these columns were circles. And one had pictures of the celestial, the heavenly body. Another one had pictures of the terrestrial, the earthly thing. So that's your 4 and your 2. And then they have what's important, 3 degrees, Master Mason, into apprentice, photograph, Master Mason. They say that the master builder called Harmsville, we just moving quick through these things, was hit 3 times. He was hit 3 times. And the chest was broken in the head. And then buried in the west. By 3 men, 3 Jews, they say, J, and J. I might have been James, Jones, and Jimmy. Is that how the guy say, don't call me John, don't call me Jimmy? Well, it was J, and J. Jubilee, Jubilee, and Jubilee. That's in their order. So the 3 is important, and they say that Jesus rose on the 3rd day. They say they hit Jesus in 3 spots also. They gave him a crown of thorns on his head. They pierced him in the side, and when he was on the cross, he thirsted, and they gave him venom. So we know how important 3 is. They believe in God, the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. And in our Islam, Prophet Muhammad, may his prayers and the peace be upon him, it's reported that Jibril came to him and gripped him 3 times. The first time he gripped him, he said, read. He said, I can't read. He gripped him again, he said, read. He said, I can't read. He gripped him again, he said, read in the name of your Lord who created it. And he began to read. So we know how important the 3s are. You have local, state, and federal government. We spoke of the 3 branches, the executive, the legislative, and the judicial branch. Okay, so we have the 4, the 2, and the 3. Let's move on. Now, America looked at ancient Egypt, at Africa. They didn't just look at and take us from there. That was the labor force to build this bad boy up. be an ideal too. They needed a model of success. Egypt was successful materially. It was the most advanced society of its time. So we say 4, 2, and 3. That's okay. When the Europeans left Europe,